Good Friday afternoon. This is the City of San Diego Commission on Police Practices Ad Hoc Transition Planning Committee meeting of Friday, May the 20th. My name is Doug Case and I am the chair of the committee. I will take roll from Zoom, and we have present Charmaine Mosley, our interim executive director, myself, Doug Case as chair, Brandon Hilpert, who is the chair of the commission. We have committee members Nancy Vaughn, Patrick Anderson, who is our outreach chair, and Diana Dent. And then we have Robin Resendez from our staff, who is the complaints coordinator. We have joining us our outside counsel, Dwayne Bennett, and Dave Niemeyer from the CPS HR search firm. So did I mention Nancy? I think maybe yes. I did mention, okay. Then yeah, I think I got everybody. I didn't get everybody to speak up now. And so if you can go ahead and share the agenda. Did we get any public comment, Charmaine?
No public comment received.
Okay, and so we can go ahead and share the agenda. Okay, and first our updates on the budget process. The mayor submitted his revise, but the revise didn't affect us, and so everything is moving forward. And so the city council, Charmaine, can you help me of where we are in the process next with the city council? Doesn't it go to them the first week in June?
Yes, I'm sorry, hold on one second. Yes, the first week in June. I want to double check in the agenda though.
Okay, and I guess since we last met, we did have our budget hearing before the budget review committee, which is basically the city council meeting as a committee of the whole. And they didn't really have any questions for us, which is a good thing. So we were prepared for any questions that they had, and everything went smoothly there. And we got council members expressing a support, but no questions or concerns. Anything else you want to add about the budgeting process, Charmaine?
Sure. So the next step is that City Council approves the final modifications to the budget. It'll be at the beginning of June. They'll also release the Appropriation Ordinance, and then there's the mayor's veto period. And this is all in the meeting packet as well.
Okay. Okay. So then we can move on to item B, which is staffing, and we have basically two things to talk about there. First is the executive search for the deputy executive director, and we have Dave present with us who can give us an update of where we are in the process.
Sure. Thank you, Doug. So as of this morning, we have received 59 applicants for the position. The deadline is Wednesday. So after Wednesday, I will be holding screening interviews with the candidates that meet the qualifications for the position. That will happen end of next week, mostly the week after that. So 2 weeks from today, I will be done with those screening interviews, and then I will be sending the commission a recommendation report on semifinal candidates. And our schedule has the commission selecting those the week of June 6th. So I'm thinking, that would be part of a discussion the end of that week, maybe part of this meeting on June 10th. But that's something the commission should start thinking about soon in terms of scheduling that time frame with me to pick the candidates. And then per the schedule,
what all will that entail?
So basically, Doug, I will send a report that will have a list of everyone that applied. It'll have a list of the candidates that we recommend for interview. And so then the commission will basically, we will just go through that book, and the commission will select, candidates for the semifinal interview for the resident panel that's going to meet during the week of the 20th and 27th. So I can see that possibly taking, an hour or so.
Okay. And I'm thinking that it probably shouldn't be part of this meeting. This is an open meeting, and that would be
right. A closed session.
Yeah. A closed session.
Yeah.
I think we can just set up a meeting to do that, and perhaps even do it at this time, but not have a meeting that week. In other words, we could have a
okay.
And Dwayne, maybe you can help us here. But if we have a subcommittee who is going to be reviewing the applicants and selecting the semifinalist, does that require any type of notice?
What you do, Doug, is it would be another closed session. It would be a closed session for under the same title that you usually have closed session in. In that closed session, you could appoint, or you could basically have the committee that you've appointed to go through the applications and have them meet in that sense. If it's not necessarily a quorum of the commission, if it's not a majority and you just have a small group of commissioners going through applications, that does not necessarily have to be a notice meeting. So if the majority of the commission, depending on who you appoint, if the majority of the commission are in a meeting, then that is a closed session. But if you have a small subgroup that's less than a quorum, then you don't necessarily have to do it through a closed session. You can just convene a time when that small group is going to do whatever they're going to do to just screen the applications. When you take it back to the full commission, then it's closed session for them to decide. Hope that makes sense.
Okay, so I guess my next question is, maybe we can do it at the time we normally have scheduled for this meeting, but not make it a noticed meeting. Then my next question is, who should be involved in that process? I think we definitely want me and Brandon and Patrick. Do you want everybody else on the committee, or? It may get sometimes it's easier when you have a small group rather than a larger group, but I don't want to, be exclusionary as well. And so thoughts?
I'm personally in favor of everybody on this committee doing it, given that we've all been engaged in conversation about this transition. And so everything that, for example, I've brought back from the community, this committee has heard. And so it makes sense to me that assuming Diana and Nancy are amenable and available. And I assume that Kate cannot be present at that meeting since she's not officially a commissioner. Is that right?
Yes. Can I add something else? If it's going to be you all, the same committee that is doing it, then you probably should do it through a notice meeting and a closed session.
So, okay. Then, but then the question of, in closed session, we could not have members who are not members of the commission. Is that accurate? Because Dwayne, as you may recall, we have a liaison with San Diegans for Justice, and my guess is, especially in a personnel matter, we probably cannot include them.
Yeah, if this is the interesting thing. If this ad hoc transition committee meeting has been operating under the guise of the Brown Act, is that correct? I mean, that's you all are a standing committee.
Yeah, we are not a standing committee. We're an ad hoc committee.
Okay. So an ad hoc committee is okay. Here's the thing: when an ad hoc committee has a limited purpose, you're just there for a temporary reason, but you don't have regular ongoing meetings. So you are this committee has been functioning as a kind of a standing committee, but as an ad hoc committee at the same time. So you know, you're in a really interesting position from the standpoint of the Brown Act and, you know, closed session. Closed sessions would, you're right, they'll just typically involve the commission, members of the commission. I don't know, and I'll think about it. I don't know that you need to do anything. If you're all going to go through applications just as this group, which means that you're doing it as members of the commission, which is just a couple of members of the commission here, and you have outside folk like Patrick and Patrick is not in the Patrick. You're not on the commission.
I am on the commission.
You are on the commission. Okay,
yeah,
so
it's only
everybody
Kate.
here. Okay, so
everybody here would be on it, but we also have a Kate who is not Kate Yalmandati, who is not a member of the commission, but is a liaison from San Diego.
Okay, so that would throw you off. All right, so this group right here, all of you are members of the commission. You could do it, and you know, whether or not we do it through Brown Act closed session or not, you'd be good. The odd thing is you could not invite the outsider in. Anybody who's not on the commission could not be in that closed session. So okay. you might have to figure another way to involve her.
Okay, and
don't we have to have Dave with us when we do this?
No, Dave is a search firm consultant. He can come in because he's your consultant. There'd be no problem. And what you might want to do is just have a closed session of, since this is a committee, the safe way to do it would be to do it as a closed session of this group. And then perhaps just once you decide, you know, you select the candidates you want, maybe one of you meets with Kate and go over with that person or get some input or something of the sort.
Yeah, although I don't know whether Kate is, well, I guess we're going to get a report in a moment from Patrick regarding who's going to be on the community panels. And I think that the National Lawyers Guild was one of the groups, and I don't know whether she's going to be the representative or not. And so it may be a conflict for her to do it anyway. So why don't we go ahead and by the way, Dwayne, we have been noticing these ad hoc committee meetings, even though it's not required by the Brown Act, so that we have the transparency.
Right.
So why don't we plan on having the meeting? Is it Friday the 10th? Is that the correct date? I don't have the calendar in front of me. Is that correct? May have a calendar in front of them. It is correct.
It is because it's the day after my birthday. So yes.
Okay, so on June the 10th, we will celebrate Patrick's birthday belatedly, and we'll review the.
Just to be clear, my birthdays typically last for at least 2 weeks, so there's nothing belated about a June 10th celebration. And I encourage you to find other opportunities a week before and a week after, and even into July, if you like, to celebrate my birth. I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Let's just do the whole month.
Okay, and so that's our game plan, and it may go beyond an hour that month. That day, and so why don't we kind of plan for that. And since I have a new job, I'm hoping I've kind of set aside an hour on Fridays on my calendar. But sometimes I don't have control over things that are happening in the office. And so if anything comes up, we may have to adjust the time. We'll plan for at least tentatively from 12:30 to 1:30 plus on Friday, the 10th of June. Anything else, Dave, that you want to report?
Today is also the deadline for the survey responses. We haven't got many. We've only gotten 21. So you know, I will give a summary of that, but yeah, we didn't really get that many. So that's really about all I have to report.
Okay.
While we have Dave here, the status of the supervising investigator.
Well, I was going to go with that next, and so.
Okay.
And let's finish off this, and we'll go back to the supervising investigator because Patrick has to leave. Where do we stand on confirming of the people to be on the community?
Okay, so I believe we had 12. Let me just pull it up on our original list. Yeah, one of those groups cannot participate because of other initiatives they have going on that's really taking up all their staff or their members. Of the other 11, I have already confirmed 7 representatives. I should hear about at least 3 of the others soon, and I'm still waiting on 1 more. But in any case, we already have 7 who've confirmed. All of them have indicated and I know we're already aware of this, but the importance when we're scheduling that community panel of making sure we check with their availability first. Obviously, it's likely that not every one of those representatives will be able to attend every single meeting, but because these are community members, this is not a compensated role. They have competing demands, many during the day, many in the evening, and so on. So I just want to make sure that when we're scheduling those community panel events with the finalists, that you allow me in advance, well in advance of that, to check their availability during the dates in question.
Yeah, I think that's fine. The only caveat there is that we don't want them to have like an alternate for them. So if they're not able
to... I understand. Yeah. No, there's only 1 representative per group. And yeah.
Okay.
And Charmaine, I did get the confidentiality form. So once I have the full group, I'll send out an informational email and also share that with them and ask them to get it back to us as soon as possible. My question is, do we have dates? I remember us saying mid-June. Dave, beyond that, do we know when do we have a rough estimate about when the community panel interviews would happen?
The schedule, Patrick, is the week of the 20th and 27th.
Oh, great.
So
okay.
I think once you finalize your group, and you can get that to me, I can work with our team here and kind of I know these people have other things to do. We can try to basically just slot some times that accommodates people the best. But why don't you get the final members of the group, and we can then slot them after that. So
so I told them, just because I wasn't confident, I told them it was mid or late June, and it sounds like I left us good enough buffer there. So
yeah.
Okay, so we have 7 so far. I'm pretty sure we'll get at least 3 more within the next few days.
Okay.
And
I see that Kate Yabandetti has joined us. I'm not quite sure at what point in time you joined us, but we decided that in lieu of our meeting on June the 10th, we're going to have this committee serve as the screening committee for the initial applicants. And that'll be limited to just commission members. And so you have the day off.
I'm kicked out, huh? Okay. Yeah, sorry. I just got back from court, believe it or not. So.
But Kate, you also missed that my birthday is the day before that meeting, and that I typically have long celebrations. So feel free.
Birthday week, yeah.
Oh, that would be a small year. So feel free to use this committee's time to celebrate me.
I'd celebrate you, Patrick.
You may regret that.
He wants to make sure we're properly prepared for the celebrations. And then Dwayne had his hand up a little bit earlier. I don't know if he's still.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Brandon. Doug, I just wanted to say this. On the day that you all want to go over these applications, it just won't be a meeting. It won't be, I'm thinking about this. You just won't do a Brown Act meeting. You won't do recordings. You won't announce anything. You just all meet in Zoom, in the Zoom platform, have your discussion, go over what you want to, as long as the commission the group of commissioners here does not take it out to the rest of the commission so that it becomes a meeting or a serial meeting, you'll be perfectly fine. Okay, so you'll just meet offline. It won't be any agenda, Charmaine. It won't be any recording or anything. You all just say, okay, on the 17th, we're just gonna meet and we're gonna go over the applications with the consultant and you'll be good.
Okay.
No problem, okay?
Okay, then let's move on to the second item under staffing, and that is the supervising investigator. And Charmaine was able to confirm.
Let us read this announcement first, committee chair.
Well, I mean, since we are now required to do it, since we're not, do I have to read that?
Yeah, no, Charmaine, you know, we're okay because you're an ad hoc committee. You really, right now, you all are doing more than you have to by having, you know, Brown Act noticing, et cetera, et cetera. You're doing more than you have to. So at this point in time, we can dispense of that, but we do have to do that, particularly when you all meet on Tuesday, right? You know, for an ad hoc committee, you don't have to have an open meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure and clarify because there was
it's on the agenda.
Type of correspondence from you that said if there was somebody from the outside of the committee, it would have to fall under the Brown Act, and then we would have to do this. So
yeah, it's, you know, what we're doing here, and I'm catching up to your practices. What y'all are doing here is you have an ad hoc committee structure, but you've been doing it as almost like a standing committee structure where you fall under the Brown Act. You technically, if this is the ad hoc committee and it's just here for limited purposes, technically you don't have the open meeting requirements. You all have been doing it. So we're good. I mean, you know, you have the notice here, you're doing it by teleconference.
okay.
You know, so you're good. And then we'll straighten it out on Tuesday. On Tuesday, once the full board ratifies, assuming that your full board ratifies the teleconferencing ordinance, then going forward, you'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
no problem, Charmaine, thanks.
Okay, and then Charmaine was able to confirm that and I'm assuming it'll still be David's firm, is that correct? That the city will be allowing us to include the supervising investigator in the package of executive searches. Is that correct, Charmaine?
That's correct.
Okay, and so maybe at a subsequent meeting next week or the following week, we can work on a timeline for that position. But I do have on the agenda later on the agenda looking at the job description, and we can move down and do that now if you'd like. And I'm not sure how many people have had the opportunity to look at it. It was included in the agenda packet. And so, you know, how many of you had an opportunity to look at it? Okay, Nancy, and anybody else? Okay, and Nancy, did you have any thoughts regarding it? And you're muted.
There. No, it looked fine to me, Doug. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but it looked fine. Okay.
Charmaine, when do we have to have this done by?
Well, I submitted the top half of it. Robin, can you scroll down a little bit? Up until where we got to qualifications, I submitted that to CPS HR.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, all we have to do now is work on the minimum qualification section and the license and certificate section. Well, all of the highlighted sections.
And I forget whether I mentioned this or not, but I think I would recommend that we include in there preferred qualification is certification in police oversight from NACOL.
I I think that's in there. Robin, can you scroll up a little bit?
Doug, I did have one question.
I'm sorry, Nancy, past time's already passed. Go ahead.
I know.
Right there. Okay.
Probably irrelevant, but.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Nancy.
So there's a section that talks about principle, practices, and techniques or something like that. And a bullet that starts out with principles, practices, and techniques, and the sentence.
It's in the knowledge, skills, and ability.
Yes. And it talks. One of the things mentions is in interviews and interrogations, and I think the word interrogation should come out of there. I don't know. This one right here. The first bullet, second line, interviews and interrogations. We are, as far as I know, this group will never be doing interrogations. And even though I understand the relationship between the two procedures, I think we need to not include the word interrogation to give anybody a sense that that particular approach is going to be needed ever. So that bothered me. It just stood right out. I'm pretty sensitive about that one.
Okay, let me ask Dwayne about that. Is there a legal difference between an interview and interrogation? And is there any problem with taking out an interrogation in the job description?
Nancy, I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of the inference of the word interrogation.
Yes.
But from the standpoint of POBAR, the Peace Officers Procedural Bill of Rights, that's the exact word they use, interrogation. So
it gets us in a lot of trouble, Dwayne.
Yeah, it has a negative. I know it has this negative term, it's negative connotation, but the legal term of art for when you're interviewing a police officer, they don't call it an interview, they call it an interrogation. So technically, as a term of art, it's an appropriate word, even though I know it comes with connotations and baggage. So I think, from the standpoint of what the law says in the statute, it's the appropriate word, but it's up to you all.
I just think it puts that cast on the position and on what's going to be required. And I'm sorry, it may be everywhere. It may be in Oakland. It may be in San Francisco. It may be everywhere across the country. I do not think interrogation belongs in our documents. That's all.
Okay. Well,
so that's enough.
Okay. Well, I would disagree since it has a legal connotation there. But I understand why the concern about the connotation of the word. Kate.
Yeah, I didn't read this ahead of time, but I mean, if it has to be in there legally, that's one question. But I think it's a very negative question, a very negative word, because it could scare off witnesses. I mean, if witnesses feel that, I mean, an interview is one thing. An interview is, where you give your information. But if somebody's a witness or a victim and sees that they're going to be quote unquote interrogated, that's a very hostile word. And, I would think that it would turn off potential information that we would want to have as part of your investigation. So I mean, I guess my question is, I don't know that there's any legal reason. Is there, Dwayne, that it actually has to be in there? No, it's just that you've taken language from POBAR. If Charmaine says you've taken language from Oakland, and I appreciate that, but I think now that that's been raised, I think, we're also talking about being sensitive to the community, to victims, to witnesses, and that sort of thing. And not that they would necessarily ever see this job description, but that's my comment.
Okay, can I just add this? Okay, it's your position. I mean, it's the commission's position. You can describe it however you want. There is no legal requirement to have the verbiage in there.
No.
But if you're looking for an investigator, and if you're looking for somebody to go out, and this is going to be a position that's going to primarily go out and interface with police officers, interface with the public, et cetera, you know, the word interrogation from the law enforcement standpoint is the term of art verbiage. But if you want to soften it and just say you want somebody who can interview or whatever, I mean, that's your call. There is nothing wrong from the standpoint of the legal term of art calling it in, you know, you want somebody who understands police interrogation. You know, maybe.
Would you be interrogating witnesses or just the police? Does that term apply?
Yeah, when you're dealing with police, the POPR refers to in the verbiage interrogation per se. You know, it is an interview also. So I mean, if you want to, you know, take a synonym and switch it, that's you all's call. I don't think you should. Just my only 2 cents. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I mean, I would, you know, change the verbiage however you deem appropriate.
So okay. So
I threw it. Sorry to interrupt. I threw it in the chat as something to discuss because I think I get the point, but I think there's a difference between, you know, doing an interview with people who are filing complaints, et cetera, and possibly when we do the investigations, having our investigators quote interrogating, you know, officers. So I mean, I'm almost wondering maybe we just do interview / interrogations because I think it depends. It depends on the situation.
I think just my 2 cents. I think that's perfect, Brandon, because you cover both aspects.
Anybody who takes this position is going to know all of those things, Brandon. But I just absolutely resent the word being there because it has been so hard for us to focus on the interview techniques and get everybody who's actually working on this stuff. The police are just adamant about not understanding what an interview is, and that should be our focus. And I think the other one should be just out of here. And I don't care what Oakland and San Francisco do.
I just want to make sure, and I put it in the chat, I just want to make sure that everyone knows the agencies that I took this information from.
No, it's fine.
I am always welcome to feedback. This is just something that I put together and I gave it to the committee. So
you did a great job, Charmaine, as usual. And I'm not trying to criticize that. I'm just saying that one word hit me in the face because I've had so much trouble with it. And I just would rather we didn't use it. That's all.
I understand.
Okay, so I don't want to spend way too much time on this. We'll get your hands up again. Or did you not take it down? Okay. You know, personally, I think that we should include it there since it is included in POPR. And this part of what the skill set is. I don't have a strong feeling though. Does anybody else have a feeling? Okay. Brandon, what do you want to do?
I would say let's just add both. Just say interview / interrogations. It would be my preference. I think that's including everything, and it factors in the sensitivity I think we have, but also it does go by the legal termination, the legal terminology that we use in all of our other stuff. So I would just do the / I think.
Okay. Is it okay if we just do the /? I know that Nancy won't agree, but Diane, is that okay with you?
Yes, that's fine with me.
Okay. Okay, anything else we need to do with regard to that issue? Okay, and so next week, if people could take time to look through the job description, who didn't get the chance this time to see anything else before, and then we can work on the timeline. And the process will be a little bit different because I don't envision that we're going to have a community panel because this is a different type of position as opposed to the deputy executive director. And so we can look at the timeline and the job description next week. Nancy, was your hand up or were you just scratching your head? Do you have a cast on, Nancy? What happened to you? Yeah, you're muted.
You're on mute. She broke her wrist.
Oh,
Typing
all of our reports. I think that's what happened.
Yes, I broke a bone that goes into the wrist, and so they made it easy for me to continue living. When I got on, I said to everybody, I this morning discovered how easy it is to eat a taco with one hand, the one you don't use all the time. So, yeah.
So how did you break your wrist?
You don't want to know.
Okay. So it wasn't done doing official business of the commission. So you don't need to file a workman's comp claim.
No, I'm not violent in my interrogations, Doug. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on with our agenda. So let me see what we have next. We have the implementation ordinance. We don't really know the status of that, but we did. We can discuss the status of the amendment, and the city council is going to be discussing that on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And this will be going before the full council. And this was the issue that has already gone to PSNLN to amend our interim standard operating procedures regarding officer involved shootings, so that we can comment on or give an opinion on IA reports in the interim before we have the opportunity to do investigations. And then we also sent, or have we sent the letter regarding the meet and confer process, Brendan?
No, we're going to send that out next week.
Okay. And so we will be sending out a letter that's directed to, it was the mayor, is that correct?
It's the mayor and Julie with labor relations.
Okay. Expressing why we think we should be involved in the meet and confer, and also identifying some of the key issues. And the intent there is that if we're not going to be involved in the meet and confer, at least we want them to be aware of what some of our concerns are. And so we can include that with the next week's agenda package, so everybody has a chance to look at that. I think we're planning on going in and sending it out this week, but we can put it in the package so everybody is aware of it. Okay. And
Kate has her hand up, by the way. And just to give a little bit of color, we were going to try to send it out today, but I don't usually like to send stuff out on Fridays because it tends to get lost. So that's why we're going to hold off and send it out next week. And then, Kate, I didn't mean to interrupt, as I just said you had your hand up and I started talking. So go ahead.
I think I have a slight update because Henry Foster was at the CPAP meeting on Wednesday, and we asked him about the meet and confer, and he said that it has started, and that there is a significant pushback by the POA, and they are asking for a whole lot of changes, and that the people, and so I asked him, well, you know, we've been asking, and CPP's been asking to be involved in the meet and confer, and we've been told no by HR. And he said the people who can authorize us to be in the meet and confer is the city attorney's office, not the mayor. So I'm just putting that out. I'm just telling you what he said. So I don't know if you would also want to direct that letter to the city attorney's office.
We have Joan Dawson
right.
was going to be CC'd on that, but
Okay.
I could also have it go directly to the city attorney as well. Yeah.
I think it'd be good to include the city attorney in the 2 line, and then a CC Joan, if that's okay.
Okay, I'll update it.
Okay. And so going back to the agenda, I'm kind of flipping back and forth on my computer screen here so I can see what I'm doing. We're still waiting to get a response back on the office space. We put in a proposal and we're waiting to get a response back from that. Nothing new really on standing rules. Patrick has already left on community outreach, and we don't have a current meeting scheduled with the mayor and city council members. So we can go on to unfinished business. And see what our timing is here. We have 20 minutes left. And so why don't we see if Dwayne has any update on the standard operating procedures for investigations.
Hello. Yes, I'm still working on them, and I will have them to you in early June. What I've tried to do is I indicated that I would try to reach out to the POA, which POA attorneys, which I have done, and I have called into both of them. The purpose of that is to try to ferret out what the concerns are. You know, I don't know that anybody will tell me what the concerns are or where the, you know, the Kate has indicated there's a lot of pushback in terms of the ordinance. So I'm actually operating, we are actually operating in a vacuum. We don't have an enabling ordinance that gives us power, that gives the new CPP power to do anything. You know, so all I can do is work off of what it looks like the ordinance is going to do. And what the ordinance, it looks like the draft ordinance is going to create certain powers in the commission, but like Kate said, there's significant pushback. I don't know where that is. So I'm just trying to ferret out if I can get some idea as to where they're coming from, that will help me. And if not, that's perfect. I haven't gotten a call back. So I made a call and nobody called me back. So may not hear anything, but in the meantime, I'm just going to operate in a vacuum. I will have a draft to you early next month or early June. And you can, commission can see what it wants to do. Just like I say, the unfortunate part is since we don't have the ordinance drafted, we don't know exactly what they're going to say about what the powers of the new commission are. And we're trying to draft, investigatory guidelines based upon, unsettled precedent. Is going to be difficult. But I still think you're correct to go ahead and press forward. We're trying to come up with some investigatory guidelines, even though they all may have to change at some point in time. The other thing I'd say is because you don't have the senior investigator in place, that person will certainly have input. But I'm going to give you a framework, and I'll have that to you probably within 2 weeks. Okay.
So maybe we can put that on the agenda as the sole item for the agenda on the meeting of the 17th. Does that sound reasonable?
It does. And the one thing I say, and this is where I really would like to at least hear where the POA is coming from. In terms of your findings, once the commission starts doing its own investigations, if you make a determination, if the commission concludes that an officer should be disciplined or should be subjected to some form of punitive action, then that finding is subject to an appeal. The case law says that if you even if an oversight agency makes an advisory recommendation to the police chief that some officer should be disciplined, that officer has an appellate right to appeal that level of discipline under Government Code Section 3304. Okay, so the investigative guideline needs to have a process for these officers to appeal the discipline that you may recommend. I don't know what the POA wants or what their thoughts are in terms of what that appellate right should be. So that part, I'm just going, until I talk to them or until I get a little bit more idea from them, I can come create one myself. I mean, to say that it shall be arbitration or it should be a subcommittee of the board or something like that, we can come up with something, but that's
my understanding, Dwayne, or my recollection is that the charter amendment specifies that the avenue for appeal will be through the Civil Service Commission.
Okay, and that's okay, and so which is proper and which is right and which makes perfect sense, Doug. Except I don't know. When I looked at it in the ordinance, if that's something that's in the charter that is clearly specified, that's okay. But still, the ordinance has so much wiggle room in it, it doesn't tell us exactly what that process is. If it's just an appeal to the Civil Service Commission, under what rules do we use, or is there a time frame or anything? We don't have any of that. So yeah, I'll work with it. What I'll do in 2 weeks is I'll come back with an investigatory guideline. It may not have the appellate procedure in it, but it'll at least have rules, suggested rules in terms of what the investigative process should be.
Okay.
I guess, sorry, going back to that. I mean, I guess one thing to your example though, I mean, yes, we can make recommendations, but we can't do the discipline. So if we just recommend something, even though nothing happens, do you really think an officer will appeal a recommendation that doesn't even?
They have, yeah, they will.
Yes, they will.
They will. Yeah, they will. And that's what happens. That the same thing happens in court. And the thing about it is Rick Pinker, you know, the law firm that represents the PLA, their interpretation of punitive action is anything that is criticism of a fault. So, you know, that could automatically trigger an appeal. We just have to be ready for it, but they'll certainly appeal even your advisory recommendation to the police chief because it can lead to punitive discipline. And we have case law that supports that interpretation.
And I think some of the case law actually came from San Diego. And so
it comes straight out of
county.
From the county.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if we go back to the agenda, put it back on the screen, if you could, please. How are we doing for time? Why don't we postpone B and see if there's any update on C. Brandon, were you able to do any follow-up with trying to get a list of all of the reporting requirements?
I will follow up again. It's becoming difficult to get them to respond to stuff, but I will follow up again.
Okay. And I forget where we ended last time in terms of following up on amending the ordinance that created the office of the commission regarding the executive director search. Does anybody recall?
Is it in the notes section?
Yeah.
Robin, can you scroll up?
Yeah, scroll down to the notes and see whether what we. Okay. Oh, he just said on hold. So I think we talked about it, but we kind of put it on hold. So I don't think we need to take any additional action today on that. And so unless, so go back up to the regular agenda, I don't think we have time to discuss models of case review for the permanent commission. And I think other people may want to be involved in that. So maybe I would just defer that for today. We've already gone through E and we've already gone through new business A. So are there any items that people would like to talk about next week? Okay, then I'll kind of play it by ear. It may be a short meeting next week with just updates, and that's fine. But just to reiterate, our plan is for there not to be a meeting on June the 10th, and instead have those that will be involved in the process of reviewing the applications to select the semifinalists will meet to review those, and then on June the 17th, Dwayne will have a first draft, at least of the framework of the investigation standard operating procedures for us to comment on. And anything else you want to go over today? So we're going to finish 11 minutes early. And so unless there's an objection, we will adjourn. Seeing that.
Great weekend, everybody.
So have a good weekend, everybody. Well, I mean, a quick question: is there anybody who's not going to be able to make it next week? It is the Friday before a holiday. I'm available, but just want to make sure that everybody else is available as well.
Doug, I will not be here next week. I'll be in a hearing, but you'll all be doing your evaluations anyway, so don't need me, I don't think.
Okay, yeah. So we're not doing that next week, but we can do, we're not going to be talking about, so, okay.
Right. Okay,
And so have a good weekend, everybody.